All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling something I think we all struggle with a bit, you know, attention and productivity.
Yeah, who doesn't want to be more productive, right?
Exactly. But instead of just throwing out random tips, we're going deep, focusing on Chris Bailey's book, Hyperfocus, How to Be More Productive in a World of Distraction.
Solid choice. I've heard good things about that one.
We've got the book itself, plus a bunch of reviews, some background on Chris and his work, really trying to cover all the angles.
Sounds thorough.
The goal is to walk away with actionable strategies, things you can actually use to improve your focus and get more done without feeling overwhelmed. Because let's be honest, just the thought of tackling productivity can be overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. The irony, right?
So to get started, let's look at why this whole idea of attention management has become such a hot topic.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, it's more than just time management now. It's about attention. David Allen, the getting things done guy, he really drives this point home. He says it's not about cramming more into your day. It's about choosing where your mental energy goes.
It's like having enough hours but not enough focus. You know that feeling?
All the time. And Adam Grant, he frames hyperfocus as a strategic tool, not just a bunch of hacks. It's a whole approach to work.
Makes sense. And Sean Achor, who wrote The Happiness Advantage, he sees the practical side, like a toolkit to unlock both focus and creativity.
So it's not just about grinding it out. There's a creative element, too.
Right. And then you've got people like Kai-Fu Lee, the tech expert, who argues that being able to manage your attention is crucial in today's world. Less stress, more productivity, even happiness.
Wow, those are some big claims.
Right. And Peter Bregman, he flat out says attention is our most valuable asset in the 21st century.
Right.
In Chris Bailey's book, that's what it's all about, managing and amplifying that attention.
And the guy's clearly put in the time. He's been researching productivity for years. Not just this book. He's got articles, another book, The Productivity Project, the whole 9 yards.
He's definitely walked the walk.
Yeah.
But before we dive into Bailey's strategies, maybe we should take a step back. Really understand our own attention, how it works, where it goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Lay the groundwork first.
Chris uses this great analogy of a diner. You're just sitting there, observing people. You might see a couple completely absorbed in their conversation, totally focused on each other.
Okay, I can picture that.
And then there might be someone trying to order, but they're also tapping their foot to the music, attention divided.
Right, different levels of focus.
And Chris himself, he mentions going to diners specifically because they didn't have Wi-Fi. A conscious choice to remove distractions and get writing done.
So even when we think we're not focused, our attention is always on something, even if it's just our own thoughts.
Exactly. And that brings us to autopilot mode. Like, how did you decide to listen to this deep dive?
Honestly, probably just saw it pop up and was curious.
Right. So many of our choices, even about things we care about, they just happen, without really thinking about it.
It's like we're on autopilot most of the time.
And that's partly because our brains are processing so much information all the time. Psychologist Timothy Wilson, he estimates we're hit with about 11 million bits of sensory information every second. 11 million. But we can only consciously process a tiny fraction of that.
No wonder we feel overwhelmed.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. Right.
Uh-huh.
And think about reading, something we do all the time. Your brain is doing so much. Light waves into words, building sentences, figuring out meaning.
Yeah, it's amazing when you break it down like that.
Even punctuation.
Okay.
It's not just grammar. It's like cues for our brains to help us process. We even blink at natural pauses in text.
Seriously?
Yeah, syncing up with the words.
Our brains are wild.
Right. And then Chris talks about meta-awareness, basically, being aware of what has your attention at any given moment. And research shows our minds wander a lot, like 47% of the time.
Nearly half the time we're somewhere else.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When we notice our minds have wandered, we actually perform better when we bring it back to the task at hand.
So it's not about stopping it completely, but about noticing and refocusing.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side, we have habits. These are amazing because they require very little attention once they're established. Playing an instrument, getting dressed, driving a route you know well.
Yeah, you just do it without thinking.
Stanislaus Dehaene, a neuroscientist, says this is crucial. Habits free up our brains for other things.
Like mental multitasking.
Sort of. You can even do multiple habits at once because they use different parts of the brain.
So that's why I can fold laundry and listen to music at the same time.
Exactly. But now let's talk about the enemy of focus. Distractions. Our brains have a novelty bias, meaning we're drawn to new and exciting things. It's evolutionary, Back in the day, it kept us alive.
Spotting danger, finding food, that kind of thing.
Right, but now it's our phones, social media, all these shiny things constantly vying for our attention.
And they're designed to be addictive, right?
Exactly. And all this switching comes at a price. It messes with our memory and kills productivity. Gloria Mark's research at Microsoft found that people get interrupted or distract themselves every 40 seconds on average.
Every 40 seconds, that's insane.
It's constant. And then there's attention residue. Sophie Leroy, she coined this term. It's the leftover mental clutter from the previous task, making it hard to fully focus on the new one.
Oh, I know that feeling, like you're still half thinking about the email you just read, even though you're trying to have a conversation.
And it takes time to clear that residue, especially if you didn't finish the previous task. And the productivity hit is huge. Studies show work takes 50% longer when we're constantly switching tasks.
So multitasking is a myth.
Pretty much. So how do we fight back? That's where hyperfocus comes in. Intention before action, that's the key. Decide what you want to achieve before you start.
Being proactive, not reactive. I like that.
Not all tasks are created equal. The necessary and purposeful ones, those are the game changers. Identify your most consequential tasks, the ones with the biggest positive impact.
So it's not just about getting things done, it's about getting the right things done.
Precisely. And then we have Peter Gollwitzer's work on implementation intentions. It's about being specific, not, I should exercise more, but I will walk for 30 minutes at lunchtime on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Turn it into a plan, not just a vague goal.
Exactly. Specific plans lead to action. Now, for hyperfocus itself, Chris has some practical tips. Schedule dedicated focus blocks, set a timer to stay on track, and when you get distracted, gently guide your attention back to the task.
Those seem manageable.
He also says interruptions related to the task are less disruptive than unrelated ones. But it still takes time to recover, about 25 minutes on average, to get back into the flow.
So even a quick question can throw you off.
Unfortunately, yeah. Now let's talk about those pesky distractions. We're drawn to them because they're often more immediately rewarding than work.
Instant gratification wins again.
Right. So Chris suggests a distractions list. Write down every distracting thought that pops into your head while you're trying to focus.
Get it out of your head, onto paper.
Exactly. And then create a distraction-free mode. Actively remove or block those temptations. There are apps like Freedom, Cold Turkey, Rescue Time that can block distracting websites and apps for set periods.
Like a digital detox.
Exactly. And studies show they actually work, leading to more productivity and longer focus sessions. Chris even tells this story about Dale Partridge at Sevenly, who gave his team desk lamps to signal when they needed uninterrupted focus.
Okay, that's a pretty cool idea.
Right, and they even had squirt guns to playfully fend off interruptions.
No way.
It's all about setting boundaries and creating a culture that respects focus. Now, obviously, we can't be in hyper-focus mode all the time, so the rest of the time it's about being mindful of distractions, choosing which ones are worth breaking our flow.
So it's about making conscious choices instead of just reacting.
Absolutely. He dives into specific strategies for common culprits. Phone notifications. Turn off anything non-essential. Smartphones themselves. Be intentional. Mind those little gaps where you automatically reach for your phone. Try phone swaps with a friend.
A phone swap, I like that idea.
Airplane mode is your best friend for focused work. He even mentions Clayton Christensen's concept of hiring your devices for specific jobs. Is it adding value, or is it just a distraction?
So make your tech work for you, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then there's email, the constant inbox flood. Chris recommends checking only when you have the time and energy to deal with it properly. And track how often you check. You might be surprised.
I think I'd rather not know.
Pre-schedule email time, set up autoresponders, and when you do check, hyper-focus on it, batch similar tasks together. For meetings, never attend without an agenda and seriously question every recurring one. And the internet itself. Sometimes the best strategy is to just disconnect completely. A lot of our online time is just procrastination in disguise.
It's so easy to get sucked in.
It really is. He also talks about how our environment affects our focus. Even subtle cues can be distracting. Music, on the other hand, the right kind, can actually help. Familiar, simple, instrumental music without lyrics, that's the sweet spot.
Like no death metal while writing a report.
Probably not the best choice. But everyone's different, so experiment and see what works for you. Now, it's not just external distractions. We all have mental clutter, too. So Chris emphasizes clearing your mental space. Use calendars, to-do lists, those distractions lists we talked about, to externalize it all. Get it out of your head.
So you can actually focus on what matters.
Right. Now, even with a clear environment and a clear mind, we can still resist challenging tasks. Chris talks about working with purpose and managing that resistance. A focused environment helps. And check yourself. Are you really working on the most important thing right now? He mentions Parkinson's law, the idea that work expands to fill the time available. It's easy to fill our days with busy work.
I've definitely been guilty of that.
So how do we combat this resistance to hyperfocus? Chris suggests shrinking the focus period to something super small, like 5 minutes. Often that's enough to get the ball rolling. Another trick is to pay attention to when you say, I don't have time for something important. Do a task swap. If you don't have time to work on that project, but you do have time to scroll through social media, that's resistance talking.
It's about being honest with ourselves about where our time is really going.
Now let's talk about actually expanding our attention capacity. Meditation is a powerhouse here. Studies show it can increase working memory by over 30%. Chris recommends finding a comfortable posture, focusing on your breath, and using apps like Headspace or Insight Timer if you're new to it.
Meditation, that's a classic for a reason. It really trains your mind.
And related to meditation is mindfulness, bringing that same awareness to everyday activities, paying attention to the sensations of showering or the taste of your food. Both practices help us hold a single intention for longer. Chris even tells this story about a monk who spent weeks focusing solely on the sensation of his breath at the tip of his nose.
Wow, talk about dedication.
Now, this might seem counterintuitive, but the second half of hyperfocus is about the power of mind wandering. Chris calls it scatter focus. While it can be bad for focused work, it's essential for creativity, problem solving, and recharging.
So it's not all bad.
Not at all. Think about moments, those creative breakthroughs. They usually don't happen when you're laser focused. They happen when you're relaxed, showering, walking, doing something mindless. That's when your brain connects seemingly unrelated ideas.
It's like your subconscious is working in the background.
And while our love for novelty can lead to distractions, intentional scatter focus has a ton of benefits. Increased self-awareness, deeper incubation of ideas, better memory processing, time for reflection, even more empathy and compassion.
So it's about being intentional even with our mind wandering.
Exactly. He distinguishes between unintentional mind wandering and intentional scatter focus. And he breaks down 3 styles. Problem crunching, where you let your mind wander around a specific problem. Habitual scatter focus, like letting your thoughts drift during a routine task. And creative daydreaming, just letting your mind go wherever it wants.
Like giving your brain permission to play.
And the cool thing is, hyperfocus can actually make scatter focus better. By actively learning and processing information first, you give your mind more to work with when you let it wander.
So it's all connected.
And just like with hyperfocus, meta-awareness is key. Notice where your mind goes during scatter focus. Chris even did a boredom experiment where he intentionally did super boring tasks for an hour a day. He found it actually boosted his energy and focus for important tasks later.
Interesting. So sometimes being bored is good for you.
Scatter focus helps replenish our mental energy, which naturally fluctuates throughout the day. Taking breaks around every 90 minutes for about 15 minutes per hour of focused work can make a big difference.
Makes sense. Our brains need downtime too.
And creativity can actually be higher during low energy periods. Sleep is super important too. Not enough sleep, and your focus and self-awareness take a hit. Chris points out that dreaming and scatter focus are neurologically similar. Both allow our brains to process and consolidate information.
Like a mental defragging.
Now, let's talk about those eureka moments, those bursts of creative insight. They often happen when our minds are wandering, not actively problem-solving. Chris uses the example of the number 8,549,176,320. It contains every digit in alphabetical order, but people often only realize that during a moment of habitual scatter focus, like while organizing something completely unrelated.
So the solution can just pop into your head out of nowhere.
It's like those insight triggers in our environment spark unexpected connections. Think of Archimedes in his bathtub or Newton under his apple tree.
Those are some classic aha moments.
So how do we cultivate a more creative mindset? It starts with knowledge, gathering those dots of information. Chris emphasizes consuming useful dots, actionable, beneficial, goal-oriented information with a long shelf life, and balanced dots, content that's both useful and enjoyable. He suggests auditing our information diet and choosing valuable sources. He even gives 10 specific ideas for changing how we consume information.
being more intentional about what we feed our minds.
And those individual dots eventually connect into complex ideas. Chris relates it to Arthur C. Clarke's quote about advanced technology being indistinguishable from magic. What seems like genius is often the result of experience, practice, and connecting a ton of dots. Think Einstein, driven by curiosity across many fields, or Mozart, dedicating years to practice. Even they struggled and had self-doubt.
So it's not about being a genius, it's about putting in the work.
Now, for optimizing attention management, consider a few more things. Invest in your happiness. It's not just about positive thinking, but about doing things that genuinely boost your mood. Chris argues that following the principles in his book can naturally lead to more happiness.
So productivity and happiness go hand in hand.
He also talks about aligning focused work with your biological prime time, when you have the most energy, and leveraging your chronotype peak time for creative tasks. He even touches on the strategic use of alcohol and caffeine, offering guidelines for timing. He mentions the impact of open offices on focus and collaboration, stressing the need for quiet zones.
So it's about tailoring strategies to your own rhythms and needs.
But the core of it all is awareness. Being conscious of where your attention is and how you're directing it. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear managing attention is more than a productivity hack. It's a fundamental skill for a more productive, creative, and meaningful life. Think about the strategies we discussed. Which ones resonate with you? How can you apply them in your own life, starting today? Here's a final thought. What's one area where you could experiment with hyperfocus or scatter focus to make a real impact? Take some time to reflect on that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of attention.
This was great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.